76ers are rolling. Two dominant victories to start the week. Biggest two-game point spread for margin of victory in franchise history. Lauren and Devon, there's also a playoff berth that has been secured. These are good times for the Sixers. Lo and behold, less than a week after what many would say, at least in the context of this season, was the darkest of times.
Turned it around quickly indeed. So it's good to see the team get back together. I mean, we can't go on without talking about the fact that nearly everyone, if not everyone, has been available in the last two games. And that certainly makes a large difference when some of the folks unavailable were guys like Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. It tracks that the team would have a good experience against inferior opponents fully loaded at home. And it was good to see them capitalize on all of those characteristics of the last couple of games.
I agree. It always feels good when you lock in a playoff berth, and especially with the expectations that come along with this season of how good they have been, how things seem to be more wide open, where there's a real opportunity to have a chance to stand up at the very end in July. So to see the team fully loaded as best as we can, what is it, 25 games for the starters, guys, 21-4 the record. That's encouraging. And now starting to implement some of the newer pieces and everyone's role starting to be established. And maybe even not seeing a few other players that may be trying to push their way into a rotation. It just makes for great competition. And at the end of the day, with the playoffs on the horizon with 10 games remaining, it's a good place to be right now, especially after a tough week. Those happen in the course of a long season. And they were able to bounce back so far earlier in the week. And I'm sure they look to close things out even better as they keep things rolling.
Oklahoma City, the Atlanta Hawks, as constituted on Wednesday night, they probably are not going to be competing for a championship this year. So the 76ers took care of business, which I thought was heartening to see, given that it felt last week like the energy just wasn't there. Maybe the Sixers, with guys in and out of the lineup, hit a wall. So I really love seeing the purpose and focus that the Sixers came back with to start this week. I also think when you step back and look at the big picture, there is so much, and the Sixers are not alone. Every team in the league has had to navigate uncharted territory this season, but still putting that within the conversation of what the Sixers have accomplished this year. Doc Rivers was hired 2 months before training camp. Daryl Morey came in a few weeks before the draft, and the Sixers were able to build collectively a team that's been one of the best consistently night in, night out in the NBA this season. And I thought it was appropriate and the right way for the Sixers to talk about the playoff berth. Tobias Harris said, we're not celebrating anything. Joel Embiid talked about the long road ahead. That's exactly what they should be saying. They want to win a title. They're not trying to just get into the playoffs. But I think it is noteworthy that still with 2.5 weeks to go, Sixers have their spot all secured and wrapped up.
Well, they're looking ahead too. I think the importance of the 1 seed, they wanted the 1 seed at the beginning of the season, but I don't know if at the beginning of the season, everybody knew what a 3-horse race this would be in the Eastern Conference and what that 1 seed would mean in terms of your path to the finals. I think they're all starting to understand that now. I think maybe playing Milwaukee a couple times made them realize, okay, this is actually a pretty formidable opponent. And of course, the Sixers didn't have their full punch available when they played, but maybe being there sort of was like an okay moment. We don't really want to have to play Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Like, let's go ahead and really pursue this 1 seed. And that's something that Doc and the players all discussed last night. It's nice to make the playoffs, but they don't want to just make the playoffs. They want to make the playoffs in a convenient, luxurious fashion. And that would be with the 1 seed.
And maybe even looking at last week is something that did open their eyes a little bit, and understanding that this is not going to be an easy path. Not that they had that mindset before, but certainly looking at how things are, where you do lose the games that you did. You go on a 4-game skid and you want that number 1 seed. It's not going to be easy. And knowing what the playoffs are in front of you, something like this could possibly bode well for them as they start to look ahead. So the approach, I like it. I like the fact that they're saying what they're saying about they're not done. The ultimate goal is the championship. When you brought Danny Green and Dwight Howard in, who just won titles last season with Los Angeles, you brought them in here because, again, your eyes were set on the big prize. And these two come in, they're not coming in, not making, big money, if you will, for Dwight Howard in his case. And while Danny Green is still on his same contract, He has won the last 2 titles, and he'll tell you about them. And so that's the right mindset, I believe, for them to have. Fans, I think they also feel the same way. 50 wins, it's something that is a milestone, of course, each season, but it's no longer about that, because we've seen that for the past few seasons with this basketball team where they've had 50 plus wins. And this year we'll see where they ultimately get, sitting at 41-21 right now before the next game against Atlanta. But yes, it's about the playoffs. It's about all of that. 50 wins is fantastic, but at the end of the day, you want those 16 in the postseason to wrap the entire thing up.
The theme for this week's Friday Deep Dive is going to be, is it too soon? We're going to dive into that in a second. First of all, 2 housekeeping items. Number 1, I always think you guys sound great and terrific. I am loving the way you are sounding on this particular episode of the Deep Dive. Big shout out to our friends at Rode Microphones.
No doubt, Rode. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a sponsorship component that I'm not aware of here?
There is not.
Oh,
we just shout them out because their product is so terrific and seamless and easy to use.
That's right. The
Another
setup
great
was
thing.
Easy. I know my setup was easy, Lauren. I'm sure yours was as well. So thank you, Rode. Appreciate it.
It's the easiest ad they've ever bought. That's for
No
sure.
question.
One of several great things associated with the 76ers based in Australia or from Australia. But yes, Lauren sounding great on your new Rode Pod mic. Devon sounding terrific on your Rode mini USB microphone. And we use the Rodecaster. Again, they're not paying for this, but I have to recognize innovation and ease of access when it's out there. So that's why I'm doing it. So that's housekeeping item number 1. Housekeeping item number 2, we have a development. And for this development, we need to check in our nation's capital. We have to go to the social media desk in Washington, D.C. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Devon Givens. Devon, what's the latest news bulletin out of the nation's capital?
Oh, the latest out of the nation's capital is that Lauren is super famous right now.
Don't say.
Really, really famous. We had to take some time. We had to change our schedules a bit because we had to speak to her people and to speak to, the other people and just check in with all the people, because when you're as famous as Lauren is, you have people. So Lauren has people now because she is super famous now that Jake Tapper has.
Wow.
Yes, you heard me correct. Jake Tapper.
Jake Tapper
is now quote tweeting Lauren Rosen about basketball. And once we saw that, it said, all right, this is a new level of fame for Lauren now. And I don't know that we can keep up. I didn't, first of all, I never thought we were famous. I always thought Lauren had this fame because she'll tweet out, this is for Sixers fans and Sixers fans only after every win, every morning. And look at the standings. They're still in first place. And all of these people just like and retweet everything Lauren does. I'm like, so she's really famous. I don't know how long this is going to last. And then boom, Jake Tapper from CNN. I don't know. So Celts, I think we have her for the remainder of the season, and then we're going to have to talk to her people again.
This is quite the accomplishment, Lauren. Jake Tapper engaging with one of your tweets?
Well, what's crazy is that Jake Tapper has 3.3 million followers, and I'm one of them, but I didn't realize his audience was quite that wide. I've had so many people from different walks of my life that definitely follow Jake Tapper and definitely don't follow the Sixers or listen to what Joel Embiid has to say. Get really excited about this. I'll be honest. I've had some cool folks engage with me, especially this season. I'm very lucky. The engagements only come because I'm covering a team that's been so successful and that does such lovable things. And I'm lucky. The content is easy. All I'm doing is putting it out there. Cool people have engaged. Jake Tapper is up there. I gotta be honest. I felt that was my guy during the election. Jake Tapper was in my ear for a week. Just really cool to, be able to pay him back, for all that he did for me.
Who else is on this list of dignitaries who have engaged with your content?
Oh, now you're going to put me on the spot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say dignitaries. Jake Tapper is the first probably non-Sixer, non-Philadelphia area influencer vibe. The folks that engage with me are folks that engage with the Sixers. This was different.
Okay. But we are aware that Jake Tapper, he does have a connection to the area. a big
He
local
does.
product.
Correct.
Via
Queen
Hanover, New
Village, right?
Hampshire. Yes. Grew up in and around the area.
Mm-hmm. And now he's on Lauren's list, or pardon me, Lauren's on his list now. Yes. So one day is Daryl Morey, right? President of basketball operations for the team. I don't know Daryl Morey. I'm on his team's podcast, but I don't know him. And Lauren is, Lauren's all plugged in with these people. So I think we're rubbing elbows with the right person. So we'll see where this all ends up.
That's
All right.
right.
This has got to stop. My face is so red right now. We need to move on.
Tremendous
update. Will he be on the float with us when they win the championship?
That's right.
Jake Tapper? Is he on our float? All right.
He'll be on Lauren's
I would invite him. I'll send him a DM.
Come on over, Jake, with the glasses.
Let's do it. There's space for everybody.
Tremendous. Thank you, Devon, for checking in from our Washington, D.C. social media desk.
No problem.
I'm dead that you had the music, Seltz. Like, that was evil. The fact that you surprised me with the patriotic music.
Roadcaster. What can I say? If we didn't have the Roadcaster, we couldn't get some John Philip Sousa pumping in here.
All right, we got to move on. I'm just going to forget how to speak. So let's.
Is it too soon to move on to actual basketball talk here on the Friday Deep Dive? Is it too soon? That's going to be the theme for the show. We are heading into the home stretch, the true home stretch. I feel like we've been talking about the home stretch for weeks upon weeks now, but we are down to about 2.5 weeks left. The 76ers, as we mentioned, they are the second team in the East to clinch playoff spot. 4th straight season for the Sixers in the postseason. Something to be said about that. So my first is it too soon question is it too soon, and I usually don't like to play games like this, but because there are somehow 2 weeks we have to get through, I'm going to. Is it too soon to look ahead at a potential playoff opponent? Devon Givens, what do you say and what do you think about a potential first-round matchup for the 76ers?
Wow. Well, first, of course, we have to get through the play-in tournament.
Yes.
That will be fun. The new wrinkle that the league has implemented with the play-in tournament in both the East and the West, it's going to be fun, man, because a lot of times you see teams just kind of, take it easy the final weeks of the season. But there's so many teams that are now in play for a playoff berth for the 7th or 8th seed that right now I'm looking at, is it too soon? No, it's not, to look at Miami, Charlotte, around there, seeing where and how the 76ers will match up with those teams, because playing against the Miami Heat with their reinforcements that they have back now, everyone's has returned, adding Trevor Ariza and Victor Oladipo to the squad, and the returning players, of course, led by Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and so on. It's a really good basketball team, and that's not a team that I expected to face in the first round if you were at the top of the conference. So that will be interesting. And Charlotte, just the way that James Borrego has that team playing, and even with LaMelo Ball going down, many felt like they would take a step back, but they still play some really good basketball. Gordon Hayward also went down. They're playing really good basketball. Defensively, they're playing, inspired basketball on that end as well. And they have so many pieces that are very good. And the Sixers won the season series and they look really good against the Charlotte Hornets. But is it too soon? No, especially when you're trying to look at a pathway in order for you to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and ultimately the NBA Finals. So I don't think it's too soon to look at those teams specifically. Anything can happen. Washington is playing much better. They just had their 8-game winning streak snapped. New York is playing really good basketball. They've moved up in the standings. It's going to be fun these last 2.5 weeks that you speak of where we get a chance to really start to pay attention to who the opponent could be. Who do you want to face less, right? Who do you want to face more? What's the easier way to get to the NBA Finals? So I don't think it's too soon.
It's really all about the path. And that's why I think for the 76ers, the focus on the 1 seed is so important right now, or for anyone who can get the 1 seed, especially in the East. But it seems like after, incredibly, the Knicks right now, certainly after the Bucks, but probably after the Knicks, anywhere after 4, that could be in play between Atlanta, Boston, Miami, and Charlotte, maybe Indy, possibly the Wizards could shuffle in and around there, because Boston and Miami right now are essentially neck and neck. Boston, Lauren, could be in a play-in situation.
Which, of course, as Sixers fans, there's a little, I don't want to butcher the pronunciation, but a little bit of schadenfreude in that situation, right? Okay. I mean, look, first of all, I have two takes. My first take is that I am so excited about the play-in tournament. I think this has completely changed the way that the league functions, and I hope that they continue to do it. I mean, the amount of teams that are still in play at this point versus last year, it's so much fun on both sides of the bracket. I'm really looking forward to those few days and just like sitting back and watching. It's going to be like watching college basketball, but it's the NBA and it's teams you've played all season. And it's guys like Steph Curry. Like there are superstars that are going to play in these play-in games. Jimmy Butler could be in a play-in game. Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. That leads me to my second take. You got to give a quick shout out to the Washington Wizards. I don't think anybody thought that the Wizards would win 9 in a row at the end of the season. I mean, good for them. They are playing their way into the conversation, potentially into that tournament. The 10th game that they ended up losing was in overtime. So they won 9 in a row, and then they went to overtime against the San Antonio Spurs on Monday. I mean, pretty solid, right?
I'll be honest. Washington is, for me, if I were involved with a team that was in a playing situation, that would be a team that scares the you-know-what out of me. And I'd say that regardless of whether or not they had won 9 in a row, because you have two guys on that roster in Beal and Westbrook who in a one-game situation could go absolutely crazy. They might not be able to sustain it for a 7-game series, but could go nuts in a game and win you a game if you just need to get one.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Celts. They won 8 in a row. Then they lost to the Spurs. Then they beat the Lakers. So they won 9 out of their last 10. I'm sorry that I counted them wrong. But they beat the Lakers. They beat a couple good teams in this run. I mean, they played the Thunder twice in that run. But, I mean, they beat the Warriors. They beat the Pelicans. They beat the Jazz. Pretty impressive stuff from the Washington Wizards.
Considering where they were.
And that's why I'm so excited about this play-in tournament, though, because you put a guy like Russell Westbrook in a win-or-go-home situation, you don't know what he's going to do. Even if the team he's playing against is a team that's better. And then all of a sudden, the Wizards get to have a playoff run. I mean, I'm just really excited. I think it's hopefully going to be something that stays in the league for years to come. And there will be cool Cinderella-type stories about the teams that get in via the play-in tournament. And I'm glad the Sixers don't have to participate, or likely don't have to participate, but I'm looking forward to seeing who does.
I don't think, to your point, Lauren, I don't even know if Russell Westbrook knows what he would do in a one-game win-or-go-home play-in situation.
Scary. I don't want to be the other team.
No.
Even if I'm LeBron James. And, of course,
30,
LeBron James and
20,
Russell Westbrook,
Yeah.
they're not going to play each other. But I don't want to be on the opposite end of that. No, thank you.
No, not at all. 30, 20, and 20. He's going to hang that on someone. In a one-game series. I mean, one-game elimination game? Absolutely. Yep.
I am not particularly concerned about whomever the 76ers match up with in the first round. Any of those teams that we mentioned, whether it's the Hawks, the Celtics, Heat, Hornets, Pacers, Wizards, those are the guys in the conversation right now. Maybe outside shot for the Bulls. I just think, for me, what I look at in those situations is, right, you don't want to get too worn out your first series. You obviously want the easiest path, the easiest road. And Miami, I think, could be a battle. We know why. Boston Celtics, part of me thinks for them, they might be able to find another gear once they just get there. This has been a really bad season for them, obviously, just in terms of consistency. I don't know. But to go back to the original question, definitely not too soon for me at all to start playing the game of who you could go up against and how would the matchup work and all that. I'll be honest. I am so grateful and happy that NBA basketball is back, with the exception of the Miami game in the final week of the season. Keep checking the games off. Let's keep going, stay healthy, win. Let's keep it moving.
Absolutely. Yep. And including that game, because in the event that you do have to face them, you want to let them know, not that they don't know. They know how good the 76ers are. And one player in particular knows for sure how tough they are. You want to make a statement against them as well. So even if you are doing your part in keeping them out, then you do your part in keeping them out. So with the amount of games remaining and looking at where they are, I don't think it's too soon. It's human nature. We're not the players. We're not. We can look and say, yeah, I want to stay away from them and see how they perform against Charlotte. Maybe we like that. Well, maybe you don't want to go there. So I don't think it's too soon. Not at all.
Our next item, is it too soon? Is it too soon to say, guys, that the 76ers could be, if fully healthy, one of the best, if not the best, defensive team in the playoffs this year?
Yes.
Confident, quick response. I like it.
You said if fully healthy. Yeah, absolutely. Doc Rivers said that he believes that this team has 3 of the top 10, perhaps 5 defenders in the league, certainly in the playoffs. And then the addition of George Hill has been really, really cool to watch. I think that's something that we heard was going to be big. We saw was very big last night, or rather Wednesday night. Monday night, he's been really good with that second unit, bringing a very steady presence on the offensive end and the defensive end. And cool to have pretty much at all times at least 2 elite defenders on the floor. That's without mentioning Danny Green and the work that he's done all season. Tobias Harris, who's become certainly a plus defender in this league. So, yeah, absolutely. If the question is, could they be the best if healthy? The answer is yes, certainly could.
Absolutely. When you have 2 first teamers for sure defensively that you can think of with Embiid and Simmons, and we'll see, of course, how those are played out at the end of the season. But you add in Matisse Thybulle, who is also fantastic. Looking at what George Hill can also bring as a versatile defender on the wing. Dwight Howard coming in off the bench. Danny Green with experience as a defender in the postseason. Also, you have the necessary components to be that defensive team that we're talking about. And by the way, we've seen it in the regular season as well. So we know things are going to slow down in the playoffs. And yeah, there will be those offensive nights where the numbers are really, really crooked. It's just the way that basketball is, and it's fantastic. But I do think they have the chance to be a really good defensive team, because at the end of the day, that's where it's going to lie for them in order to win. Sure, the points are going to matter. Whoever has one more point than the other is going to win. But defensively, that's how this particular team really gets rolling. Defense leading to offense. They seem inspired by that when they have their defense clicking like that, getting in the open floor, getting easy transition buckets. So I agree. I think Lauren is absolutely right on this one. They do have that opportunity to do so with their defense.
Here's what the numbers say as of Thursday going into Friday. The 76ers less than a half point per 100 possessions behind the Lakers for the top, also known as lower, defensive rating in the league. Impressive that the Lakers have been able to sustain that without LeBron James. Sixers, though, have had their guys go in and out of the lineup as well. So there's that. The number 2 defense in the league. They are tied with the Indiana Pacers for most blocks per 100 possessions, and they are a 10th behind off the lead for steals per 100 possession, trailing only the Memphis Grizzlies. So essentially you're looking at a top 2 team in overall defense, steals, and blocks. They have been tenacious. I definitely think that this group has the potential, when it becomes more and more a half-court game, particularly in the playoffs, to be the best defensive unit in the postseason. And if that's the case, if they play that way, I really like their chances a lot.
I think we all agree. That was easy.
Yeah.
Easy. All right.
Yep.
Check that box. A related, is it too soon, or perhaps we could better say, might it be too late to conclude without perhaps too much debate that Ben Simmons really helps this team? Can that be a unanimous decision in general? I don't think we don't even need to dive into layers. But building off that notion that Doc Rivers talked about, I'm sure a lot of fans out there heard this quote from Doc where he said that he was speaking with a coach recently, and the coach said, "I can't believe you get asked about Ben Simmons. Just show film of the last 4 games." Ben's been back 2 games, and the results have been pretty emphatic.
I mean, it was interesting, Celts, to hear Doc Rivers basically say that the Sixers did a better job of finding ways to win without Joel than they were able to do without Ben. And that doesn't necessarily indicate anything about how they match up as players or how important they are to this team. But I think it does go to show just how much Ben does for the offense, for the defense, and how much the team struggles without him there. It was an interesting point to make, because Joel Embiid, of course, is an MVP candidate, and you wish the Sixers wouldn't have had to play as many games as they did without him. But they found a way to make it work. And without Ben, they struggle a little bit. And it's, I think that's sort of the ultimate testament to how important he is. Even if, again, we've been saying it all season, the stats don't necessarily tell the whole story with Ben Simmons. In fact, I would argue that they never do. And pretty excellent in the limited minutes that he's played this week because he hasn't had to play more minutes this week.
Yeah. Again, not to dive too deep into it because we certainly could. They are just an overall better basketball team when he's out there, both defensively and offensively. You see the open shots that the shooters are able to get, the attention that he draws in transition, even in half court once the ball is in his hands because of the passing ability and finding the shooters and putting the ball in their hands in the right places to get those easy shots where they don't have to work too much to get their shot off. And then defensively, again, we've talked, he's a first team all defensive player last season, and that is could again be true this season as well, based on what we've seen so far through the 62 games that they've played. So clearly not too soon once again to talk about how important he is. If they have any chance to win, he has to be out there on the floor. And I think we've seen that in the 2 games that he's stepped back out there with the team.
No doubt. Love the way he's approached, especially the start of those games. Really aggressive, setting the tone, jumpstarting the 76ers in big ways in wins over OKC and the Atlanta Hawks. Is it too soon, I ask you guys, to be excited about George Hill when he's back and hopefully in full form?
It is not too soon. And even in the short amount of time that we've seen him, I feel a comfort level. I've seen him, as we all have, from Indiana, well, San Antonio, Indiana, Cleveland, Milwaukee. There's just a comfort level with him out there on the floor. And I don't mean any disrespect to any of the others, but it's like that. It's the adult in the room to handle certain things, but the adult on the floor to handle certain situations. There was this one play, if you guys don't mind, that I don't even remember if it resulted in a basket, but he was the Atlanta Hawks were in the zone. He was in the corner. He was in the right corner. Dwight Howard's posting, and oftentimes Dwight doesn't get the ball in the low block to do his work. He's offensive rebounds, a quick hands-off for a layup or a dunk, or a lob that will result in the dunk or some free throws. And Dwight Howard was posting, trying to find a spot down there on the low block as the zone is in play. George Hill catches the ball in the corner, assesses the situation. Dwight is waiting for someone at the top of the key to get the ball to make that entry from the high post into the low, easier angle. So what George Hill does, instead of doing that and getting the ball to the middle of the floor, he slides up more towards the wing himself and has confidence enough and his big man to throw it over the man who's fronting Dwight Howard, giving him an opportunity to jump up, catch the ball, and then turn and make a play. And basket or not, just the IQ of the point guard, right? And trusting his big man. When you do something like that for your big man, even though it's a tough spot like that, your big man is now going to trust you and do more for you, even on the other end, defensively, to help clean up something that you may not. Or he's going to go harder at a pass once again that may not be the easiest pass to catch. He's going to do that because he sees that you have faith in him. And when George Hill made a simple pass like that, it wasn't easy to get it, lob it over the man who's fronting Dwight Howard and allow him to catch that ball. It wasn't an easy pass, but again, it was just something like that I haven't seen from anyone on the roster so far. And for him to do something like that, and I think Danny Green could do that, and we know Ben Simmons has great passing ability, but sometimes Ben passing, it's a little too off the mark a little bit every now and then, just because of how perfect his are, where, you know, he has to get it in their perfect way. But even something as subtle as that, for me, said a lot about George Hill. And then to watch him 3 for 7 from the floor, I didn't care what the percentage was because I saw how the game was played and the impact that he had both offensively and defensively. Another simple play, catching the ball in the left corner. The ball swung around, snapped right to him. He was in shooting motion, shooting pocket, catches it, goes up, shoots it. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what you're supposed to do, right? And he didn't hesitate. He didn't think about it. It was catch, shoot, go. We know quick releases are there for Seth Curry and Danny Green and even Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz as well, with the unorthodox shots that he can make also. But just to see something like that with a player who's only been with you for a short amount of time, but it's the IQ. It's the amount of years that he's had in the NBA, the understanding and already just being a part of this team and knowing what his role is so far. And I don't want to take it too over the top, but they needed someone like this on their roster. And I don't think we can overlook the importance of him in the postseason and these final games of the regular season, because it's not too soon for me. I'm sorry. I just had to go on that whole thing there, but hey.
I loved it. I would just quickly shout out his dunks. Like, we got to see George Hill get up. He has fresh legs. Not a lot of people in the league right now have fresh legs. So that's a little underrated component for George Hill. The only thing I wanted to add to what you had to say, Devon, which I agree with all of, the veteran leadership, it's something that I talk a lot about on this program. It's something that the players talk a lot about and have all season long. Doc Rivers says that this is a very young team. And Doc Rivers is correct, especially when your two leaders are Ben and Joel, who are still so young in their careers and often don't get enough credit for how young they are and what they're doing. But especially when you look at that second unit that's sometimes headlined by Shake, Furkan, Matisse, that's a young group of guys. And to add George Hill to the equation, he brings this calm, like you trust him when he's on the floor. I feel very safe watching George Hill. You know, he's going to do the right thing. He's very communicative, which I think is really cool and something we saw before he even started playing, being very communicative on the bench while he was rehabbing from that thumb surgery. So cool to think about the fact that in both the first unit and the second unit, there are some really solid veteran leaders. You add Dwight Howard, of course, in that second unit. Dwight and George, all of a sudden, the second unit has a lot of experience there. When you look at the other three who have very little experience, you still feel pretty comfortable with that group of five. And then you look at the first unit, you can't skip over Danny Green, Tobias Harris, maybe add Seth into that mix. There are some really solid leaders who have been through some stuff and seen some stuff in this league in both units. And I think that that's really important. And George really, to me, sort of pushes it over the edge with that veteran leadership and that just solid, safe vibe he brings to that second group.
He's Mr. Mellow, it seems like to me. In further consideration of the topic that we discussed last week, is George Hill a doppelganger for Devon Givens? I'm fully in the camp that physically, no, I don't see it anymore. If I saw it, it's gone. I do think he's like Devon Givens, is that he's mellow. He seems to project very mellow, composed vibes, which I think is great. And yeah, I think that you can see evidence, like you pointed out, that he thinks the game in a great way and he's going to make the right play. And to your point, Lauren, to me, I thought one of the great things from the game on Wednesday against Atlanta was physically, to me, he obviously looked like he was just at a different point or felt more confident doing things than he had in his first couple games back in that first week of the Sixers last week. So I thought for him, really encouraging game against the Hawks, played 22 minutes, 7 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, just 1 turnover. Fully in agreement with you guys, not too excited. Not too soon to be too excited about George Hill. I think the Sixers are really excited about him as well. Our final, is it too soon or not too soon item on the docket, at least for me. I can open up the floor at the end if you guys would like. Is it too soon to presume that Doc Rivers is going to have a tight playoff rotation? I think right now I could see, at least in the early rounds, maybe 9 or 10 guys possibly being used.
I mean, I'm with you. I think it is too soon to say that he'll have a tight playoff rotation. And Doc is someone who has historically liked to play 2 full separate units, which isn't necessarily something you see a ton in the playoffs. But when you look at the options that the Sixers have, I just listed off the group that he sort of intends, based on what he said after the Wednesday game against Atlanta, that he intends to run as a second unit, is Dwight and the 4 wings, Matisse, Shake, Furkan, and George Hill. So when you think about it that way, who among those 5 are not going to play? And that's without mentioning Tyrese Maxey and Mike Scott, who both serve very specific purposes and could be really useful in a playoff series, depending on your matchup, depending on how things are going. So that's 12 guys that reasonably could see minutes. It speaks to how good the bench has become, how depthy the bench has become for this Sixers team. I would not be surprised at all, at least certainly in a first round series, maybe even in a second round, to see a 10-man rotation for this team.
I don't think it's too soon as far as the first round goes. We'll see how things are playing out. If you are who we think you are against whoever the opponent is, there will be those times that Doc Rivers decides that maybe I can extend my rotation. The normal 8 will be George Hill, Dwight Howard, and insert your third, whether Shake Milton or Matisse Thybulle, and then the others. And the others serve a purpose to what you're trying to do. You can't discount foul trouble. You can't discount just poor play in that moment. And you can't discount, and we've been talking about this for a minute now since Tyrese Maxey has been back in the rotation. There may be just that time of the game where Doc Rivers or one of his assistants sees something and says, I need this right now. Even just for 2 minutes, I need this. And that 2 minutes can be impactful, could turn into 5 minutes. And maybe it's only 5 minutes for the entire game. But at the end of the day, when we're all doing our post-game shows and we're talking about it, do you remember when Tyrese Maxey did this for 4 minutes and 48 seconds? So I don't think it's too soon for a first round matchup. We'll get to the second round and analyze it at that point. But right now, I think it is. I think his rotation will be extended until he absolutely has to set it at a shorter rotation. I do. Now, I do think the starters' minutes will increase, but the rotation overall, I think he'll, figure all that out once they finish things up with the first round.
You guys might disagree with me. I feel like perhaps the 2 bench guys who could be most on the bubble right now, looking at numbers, could be perhaps, and he's playing so great, Furk, depending on what the situation calls for, and then, like you guys mentioned, Tyrese. But I also see situations where it's like you get situational run, like you were just talking about, Devon. I mean, there's no doubt. I think that Furkan has 100% shown that if the situation warrants someone with some firepower from outside the arc and you need that, you bring him in. He's been through it enough. He knows what postseason basketball is like. And right, with Tyrese, if things are clogging the half court and you're not getting space and you need someone to break things down, yeah, he's the guy who's probably got one of the best abilities, if not the best on the team, to create off the dribble out of the backcourt. So I think the good news is there's options. And I think that for those guys in particular, I mean, listen, I think that the track record for the regulars, the starters, it speaks for themselves. We pretty much know what we're going to get out of those guys. But for these final few games, just the more that some of those bench guys who can fill roles can get more reps and build confidence, I think the more it'll do for them. Because right now, I think that Furkan is playing great. He's had an awesome season. I've really loved what he brought to the table.
And then you're talking specialists. Furkan is known for his offense. Can he contribute defensively to keep him on the floor?
Right.
Tyrese Maxey, the same thing. Matisse Thybulle defensively. Can he contribute offensively, at least in the half court? I mean, in the transition in the open floor, can he get you a few buckets as well? Maybe if things are breaking down offensively and the ball swings to you, can you knock down an open shot? So I think those are also some things that we have to pay attention to when we talk about the rotation and how things are set.
I was intrigued by Doc Rivers also saying that he does intend to play Matisse at the 4 a little bit more, because it's not something we've seen a ton this season. But given the opportunity to go toe-to-toe with a guy like Gallinari, with a guy like Griffin, who could be seen down the road, Matisse has done an excellent job against guys that are much larger than he is, with his length, with his quickness, with his IQ. It's interesting to hear that Doc intends to use him there a little bit more, especially when you think about the matchups that could come down the road. And putting him there, maybe you don't have to put as much pressure on his 3-point shooting if he's going to spend a little bit more time inside. I don't hate that idea. I'm intrigued.
I did.
I like it. Yeah. And as you said, Gallinari on Wednesday, Chris Dunn. He had 4 different players that he was trying to defend. Lou Williams out there on the floor. He was all over the place on Wednesday night. So that 4 is intriguing. I like that.
And the ever-expanding list of NBA staples who are irritated by Matisse Thybulle's existence. It's fun to watch that list grow.
Maybe that's the last. Is it too soon? Is it too soon to say move along, Mr. Dunn?
Yeah, well, I think that blowout had a lot to do with that too.
I think you're right.
Relax, dude.
You're frustrated.
Calm down.
You're frustrated.
I talk way too much. You guys have anything before we wrap this up? Any other? Is it too soon inquiries?
I think we're good.
Is it too soon to call it a show?
It ain't. The beauty of this medium. When it's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done.
DUNN done.
Ah.
Now we really have to. Now I gotta go.
Nah, see, this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. When you're on that level now, you can come up with certain things like that. We weren't there.
We'll give Lauren her own outro music.
Stop! I'm literally gonna leave. I'm out. Is this gonna be someone walks off of the Friday deep dive set? I think it is.
You can go do our podcast hit with Jake Tapper about the address to the joint sessions of Congress the other night.
Everybody needs to stop. We're done.
Tell Jake we said hello.
I will.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Daryl Morey too. Hi, Daryl.
Keep racking up those engagements. We'll revisit who engaged with Lauren's content next week. Sayonara.
Bye.
See ya.